you became a citizen the beginning of last year. You've been a very busy man since then. You've published your book. You got married.
I did, yeah. That's not work, though. Getting married is not work.
I didn't mean. You've done a lot of things.
All right,
You've achieved a lot.
Life? Is that what you're implying? I'll get into such
many milestones.
Many milestones. You're right.
You did the correspondence dinner.
Yes.
You had your stand-up special come out. You've been away from stand-up for how long?
10 years. It was 10 years since I'd done any stand-up, and then doing the show, doing the monologue thing, I started to want to do it again, and that's. So I started going out to the clubs. I came to San Francisco. I did Cobb's Comedy Club over in the San. Why are you recording? It's nice, I agree. But anyway, I actually did before that, because I was trying out, and I wanted to go to smaller places and play, and do material. Cobb's is not that small. It's it's a big club and a good comedy club. But before that, I went to another one. It was very, very nice and good place, and the people are lovely. It's called Tommy T's Steakhouse and Comedy Restaurant in Pleasanton, which is a fantastic place. And Tommy himself is a lovely man in a sort of Tony Soprano sort of a way. And I did all these small clubs, and I really started to enjoy it again. And the steaks are very good at Tommy T's.
Was it a different experience for the last time you were on stage doing stand-up? I mean, I have to assume it was over all those years and all that experience.
It's hard to say, because a lot of the time when I was doing stand-up before, I was drunk. So it's a. Oh, thanks very much. How did you get in here? Help!
I don't know. They just appear.
I think it's nice. What was I talking about? Tommy T?
Tommy T's and getting back to your stand-up.
Yeah. See how failure is more interesting than success?
I learned that from the master. Yeah. You were drunk most of the time.
Yeah, I was drunk a lot, and I think that I'd done stand-up again after I got sober, but I'd been a long time away from it. I decided I was going to be an actor and make films and stuff, and so I stopped doing stand-up because that's not as good as acting or something. I don't know what I had in my head at the time, some kind of nonsense, and so I stopped doing it, which was stupid because I enjoy it. I like doing it. It's a very easy communication, and it certainly gets me to that point of failure quicker. This is important. I think that stand-up is a very immediate and gratifying thing if done properly, so I enjoyed it, and I think the show pushed me back to it because I was doing these gags and they were going badly, and you use the stand-up muscle to try and get out of that, and that's how you do it. I mean, a lot of these guys did stand-up. Dave Letterman was a stand-up for a time. Johnny Carson was, had a stand-up act. I mean, it's kind of the same. Jay Leno does stand-up all the time.
Well, it seems like it's the most risky in some ways of performance, in that you're out there with a mic and an audience, and it's either working or it isn't. And you talk in your book about choosing between safety and taking risk, adventure, and going with fear. At some point, you decided that fear was an indicator that maybe that's something you should be doing.
Well, I didn't. It was something that was brought to me. To be fair, I was just after I got sober. I met a girl who had been sober for a long time. She was a drummer in a rock band, and I was working in Portugal doing a thing for the BBC, and she came out to visit me, and said we rented a little car, and she said, "Let's drive to Africa." And I was scared, and I said, "No, I don't want to drive to Africa. The rental company won't let us take the car to Africa." And she said, "Oh, I didn't know you were such a girly man. Let's go and get you a sundress." And then she said something, I don't know, it was a very careless way she said it, and I do talk about it in the book, but it was like from the heavens opened up, and this very careless phrase that she used, she said, "I sometimes think that fear is God's way of saying, pay attention, this could be fun." And so I turned the car around and we drove to Morocco, and I was scared a lot of the time, but it was great. I mean, it was great, and it kind of I've learned from people who are braver than I that fear is necessary, failure is necessary. These vulnerabilities, these, you know, when I talk to people and they tell me how well they are or how well they're doing, I think they're crazy and they're failing. And when I talk to people who are telling me that they feel kind of, you know, how they actually feel, I'm not saying that misery is more authentic than joy. I don't mean that, but I do think that sometimes self-promotion can be tiresome. As I sit here talking about my book, which is available reasonably priced.
I wrote it down here, but I don't know which. The road, it's a quote from Blake that you put in. The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom.
Yeah.
It can lead a lot of other places too, and I know that.
At least in the graveyard, mostly.
And people who are fans of your show and who have seen your stand-up, you know that you've had a problem with alcohol in your past and drugs, and it's you mine it for a lot of humor, and you do in the book as well. But there's one point in the book where you talk about it that you seem to kind of get angry about it, and it's where you say, you know, if you think you know what it's like and you haven't been there, you don't. Yes. And you liken it to, and it's the only time where you really seem to, you know, you get a sense of, well, yeah.
Well, you know what it is, I do have a short fuse for scoundrels, and so, you know, politicians and a lot of people who work in recovery from addiction get my dander up. Because there is this idea of, you know, when you see these charlatans, I won't say who they are, but you see them on TV, you know exactly who they are. People who say they're doctors and they're not really doctors and stuff, and they say, you know, what you need to do, and I'm like, what you need to do is stop lying to these people about you know about this, because this is a complicated, dangerous thing. And I'm just very, very suspicious of all that. You know, there's this guy in Malibu who advertises on during the commercials on Larry King's show. He says he's got the cure for alcoholism, and I'm like, really? Why don't you tell us what it fucking is then? Because you know, apparently how alcoholism is cured is you go to get this guy's building and you pay him money and he'll sort it out for you. And that's not been my experience with it. You can't cure illnesses with money in that regard. It's a mental illness. I also think the best description I've ever heard of alcoholics is that we are the elite of the mentally ill. That we are, you know, we are. We're not well, is what I'm saying, and this idea that, you know, put it down, have a cup of hot sweet tea, and talk about your childhood, forget it. I've tried that, it doesn't work.
But you found a way to. You found something that worked ultimately.
Yeah, I did find something that worked, but for traditional reasons within that, there's something that worked. I'm not allowed to tell you what it is, and so I won't. But they know, and I know, and you know, because it's near the front of the telephone book. I think you know what I'm talking about. And I'm terribly sorry if that's breaking the tradition.
Didn't mean to push it for it.
That's all right.
And I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I do want to ask you, do you think there's a sense of inevitability to a lot of things that have happened in your life that have brought you to this point? And obviously a lot of that is very good, but there also, part of it is, you talk about it's the alcoholic, not the alcohol. And that, you know, is there a set of circumstances you can imagine that you would have been brought up in that you would have had those same series of problems?
I hope there is, because of course I'm a parent, right. So I hope that knowledge would have helped. I don't know though. I don't know. I'm not an expert on this. I'm not a doctor, like many other people who aren't. And so I hope that some forewarnings may have helped, but I don't know. I really don't know. I hope so.